The issue of abortion is not just a legal issue. And it's not just about making abortion illegal in the country. I would tell you, I'm working to make abortion unthinkable in this country.
Yes, that was Oklahoma Republican James Lankford saying he's gonna fight thought abortions to never be able to think of, what was it again? Anyway, on the 50th anniversary of Roe v. Wade, which once again was rendered not a right anymore, thanks to the Dobbs decision this past summer by the Supreme Court. And if you think that little tirade was any worse, you were right. It got worse. Take a look.
Because we look past the convenience and look to this child's face and to say, why does that child not deserve life like every one of us? Because at its most basic level, there is no difference between any one of us in this room and when we were at this stage right here in our mother's womb, except for time.
I would argue he's correct. There is no difference than the Republican Party being just little sort of underdeveloped fetuses, just babies, just small, undeveloped, maybe zygotes even. There is no difference than the Republican Party and just little meandering zygotes in uteruses. That's it. Mm-hmm. So there he is. That is James Lankford saying he wants to get rid of the even thought of abortion. And I think it really is setting us up for absolutely the floating of proposals and legislation like fully defunding Planned Parenthood, something that Lauren Boebert wants to do, to trying to claw against codifying Roe v. Wade. This is something that Democrats have been trying to say that they're going to do now with the majority in the Senate. I believe they could potentially pick off 5 Republicans to actually get it across the finish line in the House. But John, I'm wondering what you think. Now that they've gotten their wish, Roe v. Wade has effectively been overturned, they're still going for more.
Well, I can't think about abortion because it's unthinkable now. Also, I'm distracted by him and his whole vibe. I would like to nominate him to be their messenger on issues of abortion for multiple reasons, many of them probably self-evident, but also because he doesn't seem to get how wildly unpopular everything that he's calling for will be. Credit to him for continuing to wage this deeply unpopular war, despite the best efforts of his party's leadership, which wants to pretend that it's recalibrating on abortion. I love the 2 approaches that the Republican Party has taken, after the experience of the midterms. So they saw their worst nightmares have come true. The American people saw something that the Republicans did that was truly terrible and unpopular, and they voted accordingly. And the Republican Party, on the one hand, with people like Ronna McDaniel, decided, we should probably pretend we don't like this anymore, so we're gonna recalibrate. We're gonna lie to the voter about what we wanna do going forward, what we're actively doing in a number of different states. And then you have the James Lankfords, which are like, this is wildly unpopular on a national level, and even in states like Kansas, they're voting down our constitutional amendments. Whatever, have we not made clear that we don't care about democracy? We're just gonna do it anyway. And so, good, have at it. Like, don't actually have at it because these are fundamental rights and people's lives and livelihood are on the line. But keep talking about it. Keep reminding people of how deeply out of the mainstream you are. I'm fine with that, Francesca.
Absolutely. And speaking of someone who is perfectly fine to be out of the mainstream, but also kind of positioning herself along the, sort of America's Next Top MAGA lady is Kristi Noem, who in response to the FDA saying that they will approve federally of pharmaceutical abortions, mifepristone and misoprostol, that I'm totally butchering, but medically induced over-the-counter abortion pills should be legal and accessible in all 50 states, no matter what the laws on the books in those states state about abortion themselves. Here's Kristi Noem responding to that. She says chemical abortions remain illegal in South Dakota no matter what Biden's FDA says. Today, AG Jack Lee and I wrote to pharmacists across South Dakota to remind them that their resources should be focused on helping mothers and their babies before birth and after. Sure, I'd like to see that, South Dakota. South Dakota, have you expanded Medicaid? Do you support young mothers in poverty who do not have, or not even in poverty, who just can't make ends meet to have healthcare? I don't think you have. In fact, I don't even need to check that because most red states do not expand Medicaid. But so she is taking a step to fight the new FDA ruling that allows pharmacies to offer abortion pills. The policy change, this is graphic 2, or let's see, let's look at the graphic 1. The letter says, after Roe v. Wade was reversed last year, abortion became illegal in South Dakota, except to save the life of the pregnant person. It's one of 14 states where abortions are now largely unavailable. In South Dakota, any person who administers, prescribes, or procures for any pregnant female any medicine or drug with the intent to induce an abortion is guilty of a felony. So sorry, that is part of the latter part, is part of the letter. You're gonna be guilty of a felony if you prescribe, if you give, or if you take an abortion pill. Great. So one more thing working against pregnant people who don't want to be pregnant. Then it was a policy change long advocated by medical experts and rights campaigners. The Food and Drug Administration earlier this year formalizing a regulatory change to allow retail pharmacies in the US to dispense mifepristone, one of 2 drugs often taken in tandem for a medication abortion. But the letter continues saying, under South Dakota law, pharmacies, including chain drugstores, are prohibited from procuring and dispensing abortion-inducing drugs with the intent to induce an abortion, and they are subject to felony prosecution. Yeah, so it goes on and on and on and on. And so it is, look, even with the medically induced abortion, it's still a risk, right? It is definitely, depending on how early in the pregnancy it is, it's definitely better. But we're talking about all kinds of reproductive care here. So it's criminalizing people's bodies. And it's saying also that, let's say you do get the abortion pill. Let's say you do take it. And let's say there's any kind of complication. You could be in a hospital and wake up and have handcuffs on you because you've been convicted of a felony. You've been and you are under suspicion. So it puts everyone on watch. All the hospital staff, puts the pharmacists on staff, and so now they're effectively, they're looking for you, criminal, who simply is a person who does not want to have a child. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, and let's add on, of course, that multiple Republican politicians are talking. We just had, I believe it was Mike Braun on a video on a podcast talking about how as long as people are able to drive across state lines, then that's not good enough. We have to go farther. We can't just strip away the rights in our state. We have to lock people up if they go to a place that has respect for basic human rights. So look, we say all of this not to try to persuade you to have respect for these rights. We have the luxury of not truly needing to do that. People have been on our side, on the side of people having access to abortion and other reproductive care for decades and decades and decades. That's simply the truth. We only talk about this to remind you that the fight to strip away more and more rights is ongoing at the federal level, at the state level, and we need to be vigilant because they're not just gonna willingly give this up, even after the death of Roe v. Wade.
No, exactly, and I just have to say, like, I'm calling on a lot, like, cis men to stand up. Like, we all need to understand what role we have to play in this. And so if you are in a state where the abortion laws have drastically changed, what can you do? How can you support people who are pregnant? How can you support people who are seeking abortions? What can you drive them somewhere? Can you help them get out of state? Like, it is on all of us. Like, can we talk to our family members? And so again, because this is all about the supremacy of men to do whatever the hell they want with other people's bodies. So if you have a certain amount of privilege, if you are a guy, I'd like to see you use that. I'd like to see you use that in your state, in your community, in your family. How are you gonna step up for reproductive rights? We all came from the uterus, people. Mitch McConnell hasn't figured out how to matrix himself more Mitch McConnells yet. So respect the goddamn uterus.
Yeah.
All right? As someone who just had a kid, I respect it a whole hell of a lot. I do want to talk about how Democrats are talking how Democrats are fighting back, if they are fighting back. And John, get your opinions. Here is a little snippet from kind of an ad the Senate Democrats put out on the 50th anniversary of Roe v. Wade and them vowing to fight for reproductive rights. Take a look.
The fight for abortion rights didn't end 50 years ago when Roe was decided, and it did not end last year when Roe was overturned. We are not giving up.
We should be standing here celebrating the 50th anniversary of Roe, but instead we are here fighting for a person's right to control their own body.
And now that national protection under the Supreme Court is gone, and young people have fewer freedoms than their moms, their grandmas.
This is happening because extremist Republicans decided that they knew better than women whose lives and stories they will never know.
We are the bulwark. When the American people voted for a Democratic Senate and even increased our number against all odds, they were saying, protect women's rights, and we will.
Okay, so there's Chuck Schumer mustering his we will, and we look. I'd like to see it. And the one thing I want to say, I'm glad the Senate Democrats are talking about it. I don't mean to throw their press conference under the bus, but there's something that strikes me when I watch that, which is all of those Senate Dems, all of the women, no disrespect, they're all over the age of getting pregnant and having kids. Like they're all quite aged out of the I need an abortion time frame, right? Which is why I do think it was great when Representative Pramila Jayapal spoke about getting an abortion herself. I believe other legislators have as well, but it just makes me feel like, God, we need younger people representing us. And I don't mean 25-year-olds. I don't mean 35-year-olds. I just like a 40-year-old would be tight. You know what I mean? Just like on the cusp of still being of reproductive age, maybe having decided to have kids or not, right? Like, is that too much to ask? Because this is so irrelevant to these geezers. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah. Look, you don't need to convince me that we need younger.
People are gonna get mad at me.
Representation.
Mad. It's fine.
That could also have the secondary effect of maybe the language in those sorts of speeches being a little bit more inclusive and all that. But I do think at least in this particular topic, it doesn't bother me nearly as much because, and you heard a little bit of this in, it might have been Senator Hirono's speech. The fact that they have lived long enough to remember the last time it was illegal, I think adds a little bit to what they're saying, that they have lived for decades and decades and decades of this being a right and now it's being stripped away. I think that the age actually maybe helps a little bit in this particular case. Also, of course, this is one of the areas where the Democrats feel freed up to vigorously defend popular things because largely the economic elite don't find this sort of debate to be particularly important to their concerns. Now, if you started to talk about making all of these services be covered by insurance and all that, then you're gonna get some pushback and you're gonna find some of your support fall away amongst elected Democrats. But this is an area where traditionally they have felt very comfortable being out front defenders of people's interests because it's very popular and it doesn't rock the economic boat that much. They've been pretty good. They weren't able to strip away the filibuster. People like Kirsten Sinema value that supposed tradition that she doesn't even understand particularly well, far more than people's bodily autonomy and everything. But aside from her, the senators have been pretty good.
I can't wait to see that moment where she has to defend the filibuster over abortion rights.
I mean, that was the experience we had of the past couple of years. It was impossible to pass a bill like that because she was never going to get rid of the filibuster.
Yes, I want to see her. We should bring back the talking filibuster. Just to see her try to defend that indefensible position.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.